Welcome to Cleantech Forward, a Foresight podcast where we explore clean tech customers, capital, and Canada's path to net zero. Tune in to learn more about Canada's most exciting clean tech startups, industry success stories, investor insights, and academic initiatives as we accelerate the growth and impact of clean tech together.
Cleantech Forward is brought to you with the support of Gowling WLG. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Cleantech Forward, a podcast dedicated to clean tech and the global path to net zero through innovation, capital, collaboration, and strategy. My name is Jeanette Jackson. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, and CEO of Foresight Canada, Canada's largest clean tech accelerator. I'm also a mom and hyper passionate about everything climate and sustainability. Today, I'm speaking with Stuart Lombard, the founder and CEO of ecobee, one of Canada's clean tech success stories. Stuart and I discuss the growth of ecobee from a budding startup to a household name in smart thermostats and home monitoring systems. We cover the more painful early days of entrepreneurship, all the way to the sale of ecobee to Generac for $770 million. Stuart, welcome to Cleantech Forward.
Hi, Jeanette. Thanks very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
So let's dive right in. Tell me how you got started with ecobee.
Sure. I mean, we really started with a simple idea and an insight, and the idea was, how could we use technology to help people conserve energy, save money, and reduce their environmental footprint. And the insight we had was that heating and cooling is 40 to 60% of most people's energy use, and so the devices in the market at the time were dumb as a doorknob. They were impossible to use. They weren't connected to the internet. And so we thought, if we could use data, if we could, connect these devices to the internet, put them on your phone like everything else in your life, make them phenomenally easy to use, how much better could we do? And the answer is a lot. We estimate our customers have saved enough energy to take the city of Los Angeles off the grid for a year. So it is a massive, massive impact, and that's really the idea that set this whole thing in motion.
I love it. I love it. And are you on the technical founder side or the business founder side? I have a theory that usually startups have one of those two to kick off, and then they build the team around them to support that. So what box did you check out of the gate?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit of everything. I mean, it's interesting, when we were recruiting, there were 4 founders who started the company. And I remember when we started, one of the founders, John Metzelar, who's our chief hardware architect, he's like, which one of you guys is the consumer electronics guy, right? And, Mark and I looked at each other and we were like, I don't know. And, then he asked, which one of you guys is the heating and cooling expert? And I was like, well, I don't know. And so, I think that story is really about, we had a firm belief that, if you're willing to sort of dig in, if you're willing to read, if you're willing to, put in some effort, you can learn anything. And really the 4 of us at the time, Brian Parkinson as well, we learned our way into this market, believing that we could do it. And, I was the CEO of the company, but we were 7 people at the time. So CEO was a fancy title for product manager. And that's kind of been my background and how I got here.
I love that. Wearing so many hats, as so many early stage companies do. I recall one of my condos many years ago, I was looking for a new thermostat and Googling online for the most efficient and progressive thermostat, and ecobee popped up and I ordered my first couple of products from you. So that's going back to some of your early days, 2010. Reflecting on some of your early days, what were some of the most helpful programs, tools, or learnings that you had that really helped you, get things in motion in terms of momentum and acceleration?
It's a great question. We did a few things. One is, we spent quite a bit of time with the contractor channel, with installers, really understanding, how heating and cooling works, what their day looks like. And there was a lot of learnings that we got from, being very close to our customers. I think a second thing that we learned that was transformational to the business was really understanding segments. And so, I joke when we started, we cornered the market for mechanical engineering professors from small Northeastern universities. And that's because when we launched the first ecobee smart thermostat, it was the first Wi-Fi connected thermostat. And if you were a mechanical engineering professor, like this was like a godsend, right? And so they used to write us all these letters, and we would read all their letters or emails or whatever it was that came in, and we would dutifully like put all those things into the products. And and so we had an incredibly geeky product. And while we were, cornering that market for mechanical engineering professors, Nest was eating our lunch and, winning the market for real consumers. And that really put us on a journey of really focusing on segments and what the segments, which customers, are we servicing and what do they care about? Because not all customers are the same. And so I think that was, also pretty transformational. And then I think the third thing was really around, we were fortunate in that I think we had a pretty bold vision of, a sustainable future that we wanted to achieve. We were optimistic and we were diligent and resilient. And, I think a big part of achieving the goals that one sets for themselves is really around, setting big goals and then, having the determination and the resiliency to go after them and make them happen. And really working with this team has been a huge privilege for me. A great team that really carried me. And so I think those were the three really big learnings that I had through this process.
I love your reference to teams. For every experience that I've had, and most entrepreneurs that I talk to, they highlight the importance of amazing team members to even just carry through to that next milestone. So that's, I love that you're reflecting on the role that they've played to help ecobee's journey. You talked a little bit about Nest, which sort of leads me to think about some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. What are, a few of the lessons that you've learned, and were there times when you almost packed it in?
There were absolutely times where we almost packed it in. It was funny because when we started the company and we were out looking for venture funding, we went, we went out looking for funding and people, their response was really, you're making thermostats, like, nobody gives a shit about thermostats. And, you're crazy, like this, there is no market here. Right. And then of course Nest came out and then everyone was convinced that there was a huge market in thermostats, but that the market had already been won and lost. And so I tell this story. I remember, we'd been turned down for venture capital funding, I think something like 170 times. And I was coming down one of the office towers in downtown Toronto. And you know how when you come out of the office tower, there's that phalanx of smokers, and I was so stressed because, for the 170th time, someone had told me, fail fast, Stuart, like just, life is too short, go do something productive with your life. This game is won and lost. And one of the things that was different actually is when we started, people just looked at me like I was crazy. After Nest came out, they looked at me like with pity, right? And that was even worse.
Oh no.
If that's possible. It was kind of like, this idea of dead man walking. Anyway, so I come down the tower and I was so stressed that I bummed the smoke off somebody on the street corner. And don't tell my wife that. I don't smoke, but anyway, I was standing there and I was smoking this cigarette in the freezing February wind, thinking like, should I quit? Should I quit? Should I quit? And, I resolved, I think then and there to say like, when they take the keys out of my, cold dead hand, that's when I'm going to quit. And so I think resilience is a big part of it, and, just keep going. Obviously you have to learn and evolve, but I think resiliency is a big part of it. The second thing I think that Nest taught us, which was super helpful, was what good is, right? And, when we started, we invented the smart thermostat, right? And so people told us we were wonderful and all that kind of stuff. And we, would do high fives. And, our main competition at the time was Honeywell, and they were kind of slow to the market. And so we were kind of, proud of ourselves, and we kind of made fun of Honeywell and all that kind of stuff. And then of course Nest came out, and we realized is that we thought we were the champions, and we were the champions, but we were the champions of the North Toronto Minor Bantam Hockey League, right? We weren't playing in the NHL, and Nest really taught us, I think, what being good is, right? And that sort of refocused us and really reset us. And credit to the team, it caused us to really, look at everything we did really step up to a whole new level. And so I think those were, two important things. I think the third important thing is that Nest really helped us grow the market. And Google obviously has more money than God, and they invest a ton in advertising. And so that created a lot of market awareness. And so whereas a lot of people said, hey, Google entering into the market is going to be the death of you, it actually was a huge boon to us because it created a ton of awareness and that, helped us grow and was a rising tide that lifted our boat as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I absolutely agree. When those deep pockets come into a competitive company, that the nerves set in, and it almost, you have a choice. It can basically stabilize you, or you can sort of pick it up and keep going. And we always hear the good stories that come out of being an entrepreneur, but a lot of people forget the 8, 10, 15 years of sweat and tears and smoking, which thankfully you don't do as part of the journey to get there. So I really appreciate sort of your humble, open candidness about that, because it's always easy to look at that one success and not reflect on the 20 challenges it took to get there. Speaking of challenges, flip it over here. You've obviously overcome many challenges and must have had some big breaks. Are there a couple of bigger breaks that helped your business take a giant leap forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, again, it's hard to say that there were individual breaks. There were certainly some pivotal moments in our business where things went our way. And I think sometimes you feel like, it's luck and everything's going your way. And sometimes you feel like, nothing's going your way and nothing's going right. I think, as I said, I think there was a really pivotal point in the company's history in that kind of 2012 to 2014 timeframe where we really, reset our sights and really looked at the way that we did things and how we could really improve just our overall performance. And I think, real kudos to the team. They really retooled and everything that we did, from the way we design products to the way that we do customer research to, the way we plan and prioritize what we do, all of that changed in that 2-year period. And that created a really big opportunity. I think, we were lucky in that, we had some large customers who believed in us. And so, when venture capital funding was hard to get, we went out and we raised capital from some of our biggest customers, and both Just Energy and Carrier and Amazon, all of whom were large customers, all invested in the company. And that was a huge win for us. And those were important, milestones for us.
Absolutely. You use the term luck. Do you feel lucky sometimes?
Yeah, I feel lucky every day, to be honest. And so, I think luck is important, and, taking advantage of your opportunities is important. And obviously there's a lot been written and said about you create your own luck by creating opportunities. But I think luck is an important part. And I feel very fortunate to be as lucky as I have, primarily to work with the people that I get to work with and to represent them. But yes, I feel like I've been very lucky.
So for you as an individual, some people laugh when I'm hiring, and I actually recommend to all my colleagues when they're asking me, what questions do you ask when you're hiring someone? One of my questions is, tell me 3 words you would use to describe yourself. So for you, my question is, what are 3 qualities that you individually have that have really helped your entrepreneurial journey?
That's a great question. I think, well, first of all, I'm incredibly good looking, and I'm smart and I'm funny. I think, those are always questions that I'd like people to ask other people about me, because, I don't know, sometimes you hear CEOs talk about themselves and you're like, okay, yeah, right, whatever. If you were to ask somebody about me, and what I would hope they would say is that, first of all, that I care. I believe I care a lot about what we're doing. I think I'm highly engaged, and I I get a kick out of it, and so I'm excited about it. So I'd say that would be number one. I think number two is I would like people to say that I'm a curious individual. I think I ask a lot of questions, and I just, you sort of pick things up and you look at them and you kind of ask why, right? And that's how we got into the business. I think in the first place was not, that we'd been years in the heating and cooling business or that I knew a lot about sustainability. All I knew was that my spouse, Andrea, was not happy with me because, I spent $26,000 on solar panels and I was on my way to buy a Toyota Prius. And she was like, honey, you're gonna break the bank on this going green thing. I'm all for it. But, and that was really the sort of the impetus that said like, oh, there must be a better way, or what could be better. And so I think curious is two. And then I think three is really around resiliency and accepting that you will have setbacks, that you will get, no as an answer, but just trying to keep going and keep, fighting through and trying to make, smart decisions. And so I think I would say those three things.
That's great. That's great. I love the stories about family members having to deal with the outside of work whims of folks that find their passion and entrepreneurs. I think personally, heating and cooling, I mean, perhaps 15 years ago, it was a little less sexy, but now it really is one of the main talks of the town as we address climate change. For us, we categorize it as the built environment, but heat pumps, retrofits, all of that. Are you seeing a wave of interest and that sexy connection between what used to be heating and cooling now connected to climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the built environment is such a big portion of our carbon footprint that just better managing it, and using math and science to make better decisions is really important. And I think, one of the things that's really great about technologies like the technologies that we built is that, people often see sustainability as a trade-off, right? And sustainability sometimes is considered a euphemism for a product that, doesn't work as well and costs a lot more, right? And I think, the reality is that the opposite is true, that we have this opportunity to create products that, not only help us, reduce waste, not only help us to save money, but actually work a lot better. And I think, if you spoke to ecobee customers, they would say not only are they more comfortable, but they also save more energy. As we move into the future, there are some, mega trends, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I think, the electrification of everything and the decarbonization of the electrical grid. If you look at where, solar and storage prices are going, solar is the cheapest energy anywhere today, or solar and wind. And so there's a new opportunity, which is really around how you match supply and demand, right? And in California, they curtailed enough power last year to power 130,000 homes for a year with power that would have been clean, like carbon-free and free, right? You wouldn't have had to pay a dime for it, right? Because it was available. And so if you can create these smart devices, which is what we're doing now, that understand both the carbon content of the energy on the grid and also grid pricing, you have this opportunity to use power when it is basically free and clean, and you not use power when it's dirty and expensive. And really, I think there's a future that we're really pushing towards, which is how do we deliver cleaner, cheaper power for everyone? And I think we can, deliver both cleaner power and power that's a lot cheaper if we work well. As we think about our role now, integrating solar and storage, we really, have grown our vision and mission to really, thinking that a truly smart home is a net zero home. And I think, one of the really exciting things is, I think we're very close to that reality.
Absolutely. I love it. I've got quite a few friends here in Vancouver, where I'm based, who are building net zero homes, even net positive. And our VP of technology recently sold his house and moved into a small place to buy a new property and rebuild everything net zero passive home technology, you name it, is going to be embedded. So hopefully we can use that as an example. And I'm sure he's going to be implementing ecobee technology throughout the house as well. So now let's move on to some pretty exciting news. I believe earlier this month, there was a press release from ecobee that a transaction was taking place with Generac for the acquisition of your company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's actually, the transaction actually closed today. So today is the first day that we are a Generac company. So it is super exciting for us. And I think when you think about, where we're going, we believe a home should be comfortable, safe, resilient, and green, right? Those are really the values that we're trying to bring to consumers. And so when we think about the Generac transaction, we believe that it accelerates our roadmap significantly by giving us access to technologies like solar, storage, water heater technology, more presence on smart grid. And so all of those things together, we believe will accelerate our roadmap to that, net zero home of the future. So it's super exciting for us.
And so for you, it seems like you are passionate about using technology for good. Was that marriage apparent right out of the gate when you started talking to them?
Yeah, I think so. Again, one of our aspirations is to grow our impact through scale, right? And so we talk a lot about, if we're going to have an impact in the world, obviously we need to do good things, but we need to do good things at scale. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter. And Generac, I think, is a fantastic partner because, together, I think we have a set of technologies that no one else in the industry has. And whether it is in solar and storage, water heaters, thermostats, leveraging or matching supply and demand, that is an incredible, capability. And then they're a global platform that operates in 150 countries. And I think we get to, leverage that platform as well. As ecobee, we've thought about going international. It's always kind of hard to hey, do we want to jump into Europe or, the Middle East or Latin America? And I think, having a presence already there and a platform and channels already developed will be a significant benefit for us. And so I think all the way around, we see this as kind of the next inflection point in our growth phase. And I'm, as hopefully you can tell, super excited about it.
I know. I feel like live, we could crack a bottle of champagne if I had known this was the big day. So thank you for joining us on a day that's so important for your company. Was selling ecobee a goal you had in mind in the early days, or was it more of a recent decision based on some of that ambition to more, quickly scale globally?
Yeah, we never had an ambition to sell the business. I think we always had the ambition to, create a world-class company that we always wanted to work for, right? And one that we could be proud of, and one that lived with mission and purpose. And I think that was really our goal. I think as you go through the journey and you understand this, you're an entrepreneur, different, opportunities come up, and this one felt like a really good one, primarily because I think there are, very strong synergies. And when we thought about the next phase of our growth, that felt like a great platform to be a part of, to enable us to achieve really our vision, which is not Stuart Lombard being the CEO of the company. It's really about, how do we create significant sustainability impact at scale? And so Generac's a great partner to enable us to do that.
That's so awesome. That's awesome. So what is next for ecobee? Are you allowed to talk to us about some of that?
Well, you'll have to stay tuned. I've talked a little bit about it. I do think there are those, mega trends, right? And so, I think the cost curve declines that are happening in wind and solar and storage right now are going to change the way we, produce and consume energy. There's no question in my mind. I think the other big driver that you're seeing is electric cars. And, if you've talked to anyone who owns a Tesla, after you've listened to them for like half an hour without letting you get a word in edgewise, and maybe you've had to throw up in a bucket a couple of times. You realize that electric cars are already better than internal combustion cars, and so that transition is totally going to happen. And I think when you look at those mega trends, we're really trying to figure out how do we create consumer value within those mega trends. And I think that's really around, helping people live more sustainably, creating a home that is, safe, resilient, and green, but also comfortable, right? That idea that it's a product that works better and is more sustainable. And I think you see that in some of the new products that we've created. We've just launched professional monitoring as part of a home security product. Some people, I get some emails from some of our customers who are like, what does home security have to do with energy, right? And I thought you were an energy company. And the reality is that what home security does is it creates a tremendous consumer value proposition, which is, I'd like peace of mind. I want to know that my family and my home is safe. But it also helps us understand what you're doing in the home. And context in the home is very important, because if you think about how you use energy in the home, you really use energy in the home in one of three ways. You're either home and awake, you're home and asleep, or you're away, right? And so the better that we understand context of what you're doing in the home, the easier it is for us to manage the energy for you on your behalf, right? To create these opportunities to use cleaner, cheaper energy. And so you can see how those synergies really fit together. And we're super excited. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think, Generac, with both their backup generators, but also solar and storage, enables that resiliency opportunity. And, as we're seeing larger and larger effects of climate change, as we're seeing, more weather events, that resiliency component, we believe, is becoming, more and more important to consumers. And so, we believe we have a very unique and very strong value proposition.
Well, that's so exciting. I had the privilege of going to COP, and I hadn't been before and reflected on the carbon footprint aspect of my travels, but to see it live and see it face to face was certainly something. But the couple of days before, I went to the Global Center on Adaptation, hopefully going to have him on as a guest as well. But resiliency, adaptation, I think there's a lot of reflection we need to do as a society globally on how we're going to build things to be resilient, because whether we like it or not, changes are imminent, and we're seeing it across the province of British Columbia right now with the flooding. And every month now, it seems like something major is happening, and we still need places to live, work, and play, right? So
yeah. Wow. Very exciting to go to COP. Congratulations. I think that, what a great trip.
Absolutely. So what's next for you, Stuart? What's next for you now that this milestone has been achieved?
So my goal is to continue to push the mission, right? To continue to push that vision for, a more sustainable future. And to do that by continuing to build the products and services that we've been building. As I said, I'm very excited to be part of the Generac team. I think it creates, a tremendous platform for us to really accelerate our mission, and that goal of really helping our customers live a more simpler and better life, but also a more sustainable one, right? How do we improve everyday life while creating a more sustainable future? And so, I feel like I'm the luckiest person around. I'm part of this, great team and great platform, and people are willing to put up with me to really push that vision further. And so, I'm fully energized, and my goal is to be on your podcast, next year, and to tell you about all the great things that we've done over the last 12 months.
I love it. Last thing, if there was one takeaway you want to give Canada's clean tech community, what would it be?
I think the number one thing is to be optimistic. It feels to me when I talk to people, there are, there's a lot of anxiety and doubt. I think if you look at where we've come, I heard a stat that when the Paris talks were going on, the scientists were estimating that we were going to have about a 4-degree warming by the end of the century, right? Today, the forecast is that warming is going to be limited to 2.7 degrees. Now, 2.7 degrees is not 1.5 degrees where we want it to be, but you can see that we are making significant progress. And I think if you look at the conversation that's being had right now, sustainability is, a huge part of almost every conversation. And, whether it is, the pledges that car makers have made, whether it's the pledges that oil companies have made, whether it's the pledges that like everyday, consumer products companies like Pepsi have made, sustainability is part of the conversation in a way that it's never been. And so if you look at the progress in the last 10 years and you kind of, project that forward, I believe that we're going to have accelerating progress, primarily because, people are talking about it. It is a topic of consideration that certainly in 2007, when we started, it felt like you were an outlier and maybe people would call you crazy. And so I think two things I would say is be optimistic. I think we're making great progress and be resilient. And I think if you can be optimistic and resilient, you will do great things. And I look forward to hearing about them.
Stuart, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure to have such a humble, passionate founder on Cleantech Forward. We are here to support and showcase all of your work as much as we can in the role we play in the ecosystem. Congratulations to you and your founders and your entire ecobee team. Have a great relaxation, hopefully today, and hopefully you get a little bit of a vacation before digging into some new fun and activity.
Thank you so much.
Join us next week on Cleantech Forward for my interview with Julie Angus of Open Ocean Robotics. We'll talk about Julie's amazing journey rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, how that voyage sparked the idea to create autonomous seafaring craft, and the future of our oceans. We'll see you there. This Cleantech Forward podcast is supported by Gowling WLG. A global leader in intellectual property law, Gowling WLG works alongside Canadian cleantech companies to develop IP strategies that maximize business opportunities and increase market share while protecting valuable innovation. From idea to investment to international expansion, Gowling WLG understands the potential of your intellectual property at every stage of growth. Visit gowlingwlg.com/cleantech to learn how they can support your business today.
To learn more about Foresight's programs, events, and more, visit us at foresightcac.com or follow us on social at Foresight CAC.